Admiral Daewin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive view screen. The Terran Defense Fleet had been patrolling this sector for 3 months without any problems. Space was peaceful, trade routes were safe, and the colonies were growing stronger every day. Then the emergency signal came. "Admiral," Communications Officer Jiwan called out from her station. Her voice was tight with worry. "We're getting distress calls from Monitor Station 7. Daewin walked over to her console. Monitor stations were spread across the galaxy to watch for threats. They were built strong and defended well. Nothing should be able to take them down quickly. "Put it through," he ordered. The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, filled with terror. "This is Monitor Station 7. We're under attack by something impossible. They're not using weapons. They're just singing. The crew is changing. Their eyes are going blank and they're joining the song. Help us, they're coming for the command center now. The harmony is so beautiful, but it's wrong, it's all wrong." The transmission cut to silence. Jiwan's fingers flew over her controls. "Sir, I'm trying to reach them again, but there's nothing. It's like the entire station just disappeared." Before Daewin could respond, another alarm sounded. Then another. Reports flooded in from across the sector. Monitor Station 12 had gone dark. Station 15 was sending scrambled messages about a beautiful song before cutting out. Station 23's last transmission was just screaming, then nothing. "Get me Chancellor Chris," Daewin ordered. "Emergency channel." The view screen flickered and showed the elegant face of Chancellor Chris, leader of the Velthari Empire. The Velthari looked like tall, graceful humans with silver skin and large, intelligent eyes. Chris was old by their standards, having served as Chancellor for over 200 years. "Admiral Daewin," Chris said, but her usual calm voice was shaking. "Are you receiving the same reports we are?" 17 monitor stations gone dark in the last hour," Daewin confirmed. "What do you know about this?" Chris was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. All species representatives are required to attend. This is not a normal threat, Admiral. I fear we are dealing with something from the old times." "The old times?" "Before your species reached the stars. Before most of our current civilizations existed. Come to the Council station immediately. And Admiral, bring every ship you can spare. If I'm right about what this is, we'll need all the firepower in the galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving Daewin staring at the blank screen. In 30 years of military service, he had never heard fear in Chris's voice. The Velthari were known across the galaxy for their wisdom and calm thinking. If Chris was afraid, then something terrible was happening. 2 days later, Daewin sat in the Great Council chamber on Nexus Station. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular room. The Shardborn, who looked like living crystals, normally glowed with bright, confident light. Today their crystals were dim and flickering. The Kralix warriors, reptilian creatures who feared nothing in battle, kept checking their weapons nervously. Even the Mindweavers, beings of pure thought who rarely showed emotion, seemed disturbed. At the center of the chamber stood an ancient figure that Daewin had never seen before. She was humanoid but clearly very old, with pale blue skin and white hair that seemed to move on its own. Her eyes held the weight of centuries. "Council members," Chancellor Chris announced. "This is Archivist Yuna of the Keepers. She is one of the last who remembers the forbidden histories." Yuna stepped forward, her voice carrying easily through the large chamber despite being soft and quiet. "What you are witnessing is the return of the Devourers." A chill ran through the room. Some representatives gasped. Others made religious gestures. The Kralix ambassador actually stood up and reached for his weapon before stopping himself. "That's impossible," said the Shardborn representative, her crystal voice ringing with disbelief. "The Devourers are myths, stories to frighten children." Yuna's ancient eyes fixed on the crystal being. "I was there when we imprisoned them, young one. I sang in the Great Binding. I watched as thousands of my people gave their lives to lock the Devourers away in the void between dimensions." She raised her hand, and the chamber's holographic projectors activated. Images filled the air above their heads. Vast creatures of impossible beauty and terrible hunger, beings that seemed to be made of living song and shadow. "The Devourers were not always evil," Yuna continued. "Long ago, they were beings of pure harmony. They sang the first songs of creation, helping to shape the universe itself. But they grew hungry. They discovered that consciousness had a taste, a wonderful flavor they could not resist. The images showed planets full of life suddenly going silent, space stations filled with empty-eyed beings who moved in perfect, horrible unity. They would come to worlds and sing, Una said. Their song was beautiful beyond description. Those who heard it would stop whatever they were doing and listen. Slowly, the song would enter their minds, taking pieces of their consciousness, their very souls. The victims would join the song, becoming extensions of the Devourers' will. Daewon felt sick as he watched the holographic scenes. How did you stop them? We created the Song of Binding, Una replied. It took the greatest minds and voices of 47 different species. We learned to sing their own original song back to them, but in reverse. It reminded them of what they once were and bound them in chains of harmony, trapping them in a dimensional prison. But the seals are breaking, Chancellor Chris added. The monitor stations that went dark were the ones guarding the anchor points for the prison. The Devourers are testing their bonds. How long do we have? Asked the Mindweaver representative. Una's expression was grim. Days, perhaps weeks. When they break free completely, they will be hungrier than ever. Thousands of years in prison will have made their appetite terrible beyond imagination. The council chamber erupted in voices as representatives began talking over each other. Some called for immediate evacuation of populated systems. Others demanded military action. The Kralliks wanted to prepare for war. Silence, Chris commanded, and the room went quiet. Archivist Una, can the Song of Binding be used again? The ancient keeper shook her head slowly. The species who originally sang it are gone. Their vocal structures were unique. We have tried to teach it to others over the centuries, but it requires perfect harmony across multiple dimensions of reality. No current species has the ability to sing it correctly. Admiral Daewon stood up. As the human representative, he rarely spoke in council meetings. Most alien species still considered humans to be newcomers to galactic civilization, but now he had to ask the question that was burning in his mind. What happens if we can't stop them? Una looked at him with eyes that had seen the end of worlds. Then consciousness itself will be devoured. Every thinking being in the galaxy will become an empty shell, singing the Devourer's song until the universe itself falls silent. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as automated systems announced an incoming priority message. Communications Officer G1's voice came through the chamber speakers. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. 3 more monitor stations have gone dark in the last 10 minutes. And, sir, the last transmission from Monitor Station 1 included something else. Music. Beautiful, terrible music that made the communications crew stop working just to listen. Daewon felt his blood turn cold. The Devourers weren't just testing their prison anymore. They were beginning to break free, and the galaxy had no way to stop them. Dr. Minho rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the holographic display floating above his desk. Numbers and sound patterns covered every surface of his small research lab aboard the human science vessel Discovery. For 3 weeks, he had been working with teams across the galaxy to understand the Song of Binding. It was the most complex piece of music he had ever seen. Computer, play sample 17 again, he said. The lab filled with haunting harmonies that made his skin crawl. This was just a small piece of the original song, recorded from ancient Keeper archives. Even this tiny fragment contained mathematical patterns that hurt to think about. The full song required thousands of voices, singing in perfect coordination across dimensions that normal physics couldn't explain. A message alert chimed on his communicator. Dr. Minho opened the channel and saw the exhausted face of Dr. Tala, a Mindweaver researcher working on Nexus Station. Any progress? She asked. Her mental voice echoed directly in his mind, tired and frustrated. I'm starting to understand why it doesn't work, Minho replied. The song isn't just about sound frequencies. Look at this. He shared his data with her. The holographic display showed complex patterns that twisted through multiple dimensions. The original singers weren't just making music, he explained. They were expressing emotion, intention, and something the ancient texts call spirit resonance all at the same time. The Devourers were created beings made of pure harmony. The Song of Binding works by reminding them of their original nature, before they became hungry. Dr. Tala's crystalline features showed confusion. But we've tried that approach. The council organized a choir of 10,000 singers from 12 different species. They failed completely. Minho nodded grimly. Because we're thinking about it wrong. We're trying to recreate the technical aspects without understanding the emotional core. The song has to come from beings who understand what it means to resist temptation, to choose goodness over hunger. Before Dr. Tala could respond, emergency alarms began sounding throughout both their ships. Minho's communicator lit up with urgent messages. All research teams, this is Admiral Daewon, came the Admiral's voice over the ship's communications. We've got a situation in the Kepler sector. Captain Sora is reporting direct contact with Devourer forces. Minho's heart raced. Direct contact meant the Devourers were no longer just testing their prison. They were actively breaking through. On the bridge of her cargo vessel, Bright Star, Captain Sora watched in horror as the research station Gamma 7 drifted silently in space ahead of them. She had come here to deliver supplies, but something was terribly wrong. Hail them again, she told her communications officer. Gamma 7, this is the Bright Star, please respond. After a moment, a voice came through the speakers. It sounded normal at first, but there was something off about it. The words came too smoothly, like they were being spoken by someone who wasn't really thinking about them. Bright Star, this is Gamma 7. We are fine. Please come aboard. We have something beautiful to show you. Sora's crew looked at each other nervously. Her engineer, a tough man named Bento, shook his head. Captain, something's wrong with them. That voice, it's too calm. Station Gamma 7, Sora said into her communicator. What happened to your scheduled research update? Central Command hasn't heard from you in 6 hours. We have been busy with our work, the voice replied. We have made a wonderful discovery. Please come aboard so we can share it with you. Through the view screen, Sora could see figures moving behind the station's windows. They moved in perfect coordination, like dancers following the same rhythm. All of them had their faces turned toward the Bright Star, watching. Take us to a safe distance, Sora ordered her pilot. Something's very wrong here. As her ship began to move away, the figures in the station all turned to follow their movement. Then faintly, music began coming through their communication system. It was beautiful beyond description, like the song of angels mixed with the harmony of wind through crystal caves. Sora's pilot stopped working and turned to listen. Her engineer put down his tools. The communications officer leaned forward, a dreamy expression on her face. Turn it off, Sora shouted, but she found herself wanting to listen too. The song was so lovely, so perfect. It promised peace and understanding and belonging. With a massive effort of will, Sora reached over and cut the communication system. The song stopped and her crew shook their heads like people waking up from a dream. Captain, her pilot said, his voice shaking. What was that? Before Sora could answer, the research station began to change. Its hull started glowing with soft, beautiful light. The figures visible through the windows were no longer moving randomly. They stood in perfect formation, their mouths open, clearly singing something that Sora couldn't hear through the vacuum of space. Get us out of here, she ordered. Maximum speed. As the Bright Star jumped to hyperspace, Sora sent an emergency message to Admiral Daewon. The Devourers weren't just breaking out of their prison. They had already claimed their first victims in thousands of years. Back on Nexus Station, the Galactic Council met in emergency session again. This time the mood was pure panic. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. 3 more research stations had gone silent. A cargo convoy had been found drifting in space, their crews converted into empty-eyed singers. We have to try the Song of Binding, Chancellor Chris announced. It's our only option. Archivist Una stood at the center of the chamber looking older than ever. I have trained the best singers from every species. We will attempt a limited version of the song, hoping to at least slow the Devourers down. The attempt was set up in the station's largest auditorium. Representatives from 43 different species gathered, along with thousands of trained singers participating. By holographic projection from across the galaxy, Dr. Minho was there to monitor the harmonic patterns. Dr. Tala and her team of mind-weavers prepared to coordinate the psychic aspects of the song. Una raised her hands, and the greatest choir in galactic history began to sing. For a moment, it seemed to work. The complex harmonies filled the auditorium with sound that touched dimensions beyond normal hearing. Dr. Minho's instrument showed patterns that matched some elements of the original Song of Binding. Then everything went wrong. The harmonies clashed instead of blending. Singers from different species couldn't match each other's vocal ranges. The psychic elements interfered with the musical ones. What should have been beautiful became discord. Chaos, a cacophony that hurt to hear. Worse, the failed song seemed to attract attention. Dr. Minho's equipment detected something responding from the void between dimensions, something vast and hungry drawn by their attempt like a predator hearing wounded prey. "Stop," Una commanded, but it was too late. 7 singers collapsed, their eyes going blank. They stood up slowly, their movements perfectly coordinated, and began to sing a different song. The Devourer song. Security forces stunned the converted singers before their harmony could spread, but the damage was done. The failed attempt had made things worse. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the unconscious singers and Dr. Minho analyzed what had gone wrong, Admiral Daewin found himself talking quietly with Dr. Tala. "How long do we have?" he asked. The Mindweaver's mental voice was heavy with despair. "The prison seals are breaking faster now. Our failed song attempt may have accelerated the process. I estimate 3 days, perhaps 4, before the Devourers can manifest fully in our dimension. And we still have no way to stop them?" "The Song of Binding requires something we don't have," Dr. Tala replied. "The original singers evolved their vocal abilities in harmony with their spiritual development. They spent millions of years learning to express pure intention through sound. Current species are too different, too diverse. We can't achieve the unity needed." Daewin stared out at the stars through the station's viewports. Somewhere out there, ancient entities of terrible hunger were breaking free from their prison. The galaxy's greatest minds had tried to recreate the one weapon that could stop them, and they had failed completely. In his research lab, Dr. Minho continued working through the night. There had to be something they were missing, some element of the original song that they didn't understand. As he reviewed the harmonic analysis of their failed attempt, something caught his attention. In all the chaos and discord, there had been moments of perfect harmony. Brief seconds when the song had worked exactly as it should. He isolated those moments and played them back. The voices that had achieved perfect harmony weren't the trained alien singers or the ancient keepers. They were the humans in the choir. Communication Officer Jiwon, Engineer Hyun from the Discovery, Captain Sora, who had joined by hologram from her ship. Human voices singing together had created the only successful elements of the Song of Binding. Dr. Minho stared at the data, his heart racing. He didn't understand why yet, but somehow human voices were different. They could do something that no other species in the galaxy could accomplish. He reached for his communicator to contact Admiral Daewin, but before he could send the message, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The Devourers had broken through another seal, and this time they were coming straight for Nexus Station. The evacuation fleet stretched across 3 star systems. Admiral Daewin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching thousands of ships carrying refugees from the outer colonies. They were running from something that couldn't be fought with weapons, only outrun for a limited time. "Status report," he called to Communications Officer Jiwon. "Convoy 7 has cleared the danger zone," she replied, her fingers dancing across her console. "But Admiral, we're getting strange reports from the ships closest to Devourer territory. Crew members are reporting dreams about beautiful music. Some are requesting permission to turn around and investigate the source." Daewin felt his stomach tighten. The Devourer's influence was spreading faster than they had expected. Even people who had never heard the actual song were being affected through some kind of psychic resonance. "Order all ships to increase distance from the affected zones," he commanded. "And get me Dr. Minho." The scientist's face appeared on the view screen moments later. He looked exhausted but excited. "Admiral, I need to show you something," Dr. Minho said without greeting. "I've been analyzing the failed binding attempt on Nexus Station. We missed something important." "What kind of something?" "Human voices," Dr. Minho replied. When the song fell apart, there were brief moments where it worked perfectly. Every single one of those moments involved human singers. We're different somehow. Our voices can do something that no other species can accomplish. Before Daewin could respond, Captain Sora's voice came through the emergency channel. "Admiral, we've got a problem. The research vessel Harmony is refusing evacuation orders. They say they want to study the Devourer song more closely." Daewin switched to the ship's frequency. "Research vessel Harmony, this is Admiral Daewin. You are ordered to evacuate immediately." The response came in a voice that was too calm, too peaceful. "Admiral, we have made a wonderful discovery. The song is not dangerous if you don't fight it. Please come listen. It's beautiful beyond description. Daewon cut the communication quickly. Another ship lost to conversion. That made 12 vessels in the last 6 hours. Dr. Minho, he said, turning back to the scientist, explain this theory about human voices. Dr. Minho shared his data through the ship's holographic systems. Complex sound patterns filled the bridge, showing the harmonic analysis of the failed binding attempt. Look at these readings. He pointed to specific sections of the display. When humans sang together, they created perfect harmonic intervals that matched the original song of binding. But when other species tried to join in, the harmony broke down. Engineer Hyon, who had been working on ship repairs nearby, looked up from her console. Dr. Minho, I was in that choir. The weird thing was, when I sang with the other humans, it felt natural. Like the song was something I already knew but had forgotten. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Dr. Minho said excitedly. I think human consciousness operates on a frequency that the Devourers have trouble processing. While other species evolved with telepathic or psychic abilities, humans developed pure emotional expression through sound alone. Communications Officer Jiwon frowned. But Dr. Minho, even if human voices work better, there aren't enough of us. The original Song of Binding required thousands of singers. There are only about 50 humans aboard this entire evacuation fleet. That's not true, Dr. Minho replied. There are millions of humans spread across the galaxy. Colonies, space stations, generation ships, research facilities. If we could coordinate them all. Admiral Daewon shook his head. Even with quantum communications, the time lag across galactic distances makes perfect coordination impossible. The song has to be sung in perfect harmony, right? A few milliseconds of delay would ruin everything. Before Dr. Minho could respond, alarms sounded throughout the ship. On the view screen, a small group of evacuation ships had stopped moving. They hung motionless in space, no longer responding to communications. They're turning around, Jiwon reported, her voice filled with horror. All 7 ships are heading back toward Devourer territory. Can you reach them? I'm trying, but... Admiral, I'm getting music through the communication system. The same beautiful harmony Captain Sora reported. Cut all communications, Daewon ordered. No one listens to anything from those ships. As the converted vessels disappeared toward the areas of Devourer influence, Dr. Minho had an idea. Admiral, I need to test something. Give me permission to try a small-scale version of the Song of Binding with just the humans on this ship. Is it safe? I think so. If human voices really are resistant to Devourer influence, then human singers should be able to practice the song without being converted. Daewon considered this. They were running out of options and time. Very well. But I want security teams standing by, and if anything goes wrong, we stop immediately. An hour later, 23 humans gathered in the ship's largest cargo bay. Dr. Minho had taught them a simplified version of the Song of Binding, focusing on the harmonic patterns that had worked during the failed attempt on Nexus Station. Remember, he told them, this song is about intention as much as sound. You're not just making music. You're expressing the idea of binding, of containing hunger with harmony. Engineer Hyon raised her hand. Dr. Minho, how do we know this will work? We don't, he admitted. But if I'm right about human consciousness being different, then you should be able to resist the Devourer's influence while still channeling their original harmonic nature. Admiral Daewon watched from the observation deck as the small choir began to sing. The melody was unlike anything he had ever heard. Beautiful, but also somehow ancient, like a half-remembered dream from humanity's earliest days. The effect was immediate. The cargo bay filled with a soft golden light that seemed to come from the singers themselves. Dr. Minho's instruments went wild, detecting harmonic patterns that matched the original Song of Binding perfectly. Then something unexpected happened. The ship's sensors detected a response from the Devourer-controlled territory. Not an attack, but a kind of confused questioning, like a predator suddenly unable to locate its prey. It's working, Dr. Minho whispered. The song is creating a buffer zone. The Devourers can't sense us while the humans are singing. But the test revealed a problem. The 23 singers could only maintain the song for a few minutes before exhaustion set in. And the protective effect only covered their immediate area. To protect the entire evacuation fleet, they would need hundreds of singers working in shifts. After the test ended, the human singers sat on the cargo bay floor, breathing heavily but excited. "I felt something," Communications Officer G1 said, "like the song was connecting me to something vast and old. Not the Devourers, but whatever they used to be before they became hungry." Engineer Hyon nodded. It was like touching the memory of creation itself. Dr. Minho was already working on his portable computer, calculating possibilities. "Admiral, I think we can expand this. If we organize the humans throughout the evacuation fleet, we can create overlapping buffer zones. It won't be the complete song of binding, but it might be enough to keep the Devourers from converting more ships." Over the next several hours, Admiral Daewin coordinated with the fleet commanders to identify every human in the evacuation convoy. There were more than he had expected, nearly 800 spread across 200 ships. Dr. Minho worked with small groups through holographic communication, teaching them the simplified binding song. The results were remarkable. As human voices began singing throughout the fleet, the rate of ship conversions dropped to 0. The refugees who had been reporting dreams about beautiful music said the dreams stopped. The Devourers' psychic influence seemed unable to penetrate the harmonic barrier created by human song, but their success created a new problem. As word of the human resistance spread through the galactic communication networks, desperate requests for help poured in from across the galaxy. "Admiral," Chancellor Chris contacted him from the emergency government station, "we're receiving reports that human colonies throughout the galaxy are being specifically targeted by Devourer forces. It's like they've realized that humans pose a threat." Captain Sora's voice came through on another channel. "Sir, I'm seeing massive Devourer manifestations moving toward Earth itself. They're not just trying to feed anymore. They're trying to eliminate the one species that can resist them." Admiral Daewin felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Humanity had discovered they possessed a unique ability to fight the Devourers, but that discovery had made them the primary target. The ancient entities were changing their strategy, focusing their attacks on human populations. Dr. Minho appeared on his view screen, his face grim. "Admiral, I've been monitoring the Devourers' movements. They're not just attacking randomly anymore. They're systematically targeting every human settlement they can find. And sir, I don't think our simplified song will be enough to stop them when they come in full force." "What do you mean?" "We can create buffer zones and resist their influence, but the complete song of binding requires perfect coordination across the entire galaxy. We need every human voice singing at exactly the same time, despite being separated by thousands of light years." Admiral Daewin stared at the star maps showing Devourer movements. Ancient entities of terrible power were converging. The message spread through human space faster than any official government communication. It traveled through quantum networks, emergency broadcasts, and simple word of mouth from ship to ship, colony to colony, generation vessel to generation vessel. Humanity must sing together, or all consciousness in the galaxy will die. Captain Sora stood in the cargo bay of her ship, watching her crew prepare for evacuation. But they weren't running anymore. They were joining the greatest coordination effort in human history. "Captain," her engineer Bento called out, "we've got confirmation from New Sydney Colony. 3 million humans are participating. The Mars Industrial Complex just finished converting their main assembly hall into a singing chamber for 200,000 workers." Sora nodded, checking the list on her tablet. The numbers were staggering. Earth itself had turned every stadium, concert hall, and public space into coordination centers. The Luna colonies had suspended all mining operations so their crews could participate. Generation ships that had been traveling between stars for centuries were altering course to join designated singing formations. But the logistics were incredible. Dr. Minho's calculations showed they needed perfect synchronization across thousands of light years. Even quantum communication networks had tiny delays that would ruin the song of binding's harmonic requirements. That's when 17-year-old Nari Kim made her breakthrough. The teenage communications prodigy had been working in the quantum research lab on Proxima Station when the call for human singers went out. While adults focused on gathering people and teaching them the song, Nari tackled the impossible synchronization problem. "Dr. Minho," she called through the quantum communication link, her young voice excited. "I think I know how to make this work." The scientist's tired face appeared on her screen. He had been awake for 3 days straight, coordinating the galaxy-wide effort. Nari, we've tried every synchronization method known to science. The quantum delays are too random to predict. That's exactly the point, Nari replied. Instead of trying to synchronize across space, what if we synchronize across time? She shared her calculations through the network. Dr. Minho's eyes widened as he studied her work. You want to create a temporal echo chamber, he said slowly. Each human singer would perform slightly ahead or behind their local time frame, so that all the voices arrive at the same temporal coordinate simultaneously. Exactly. We use the galaxy's quantum communication grid to create a single harmonic moment that exists outside normal space-time. Every human voice would contribute to the same instant, regardless of where they physically are. Dr. Minho ran her numbers through his computers. The mathematics were incredibly complex, but they worked. Nari, this is brilliant, but the timing has to be perfect to the nanosecond. If even one group sings at the wrong temporal coordinate, the entire song could collapse. I can handle the coordination, Nari said confidently. I'll create a quantum countdown that adjusts for local temporal variations. Every singing group will receive their exact timing through their quantum communicators. As Nari worked on her synchronization system, the human response continued to grow. Admiral Daewon coordinated with fleet commanders throughout human space, turning warships into mobile singing platforms. Military personnel who had trained their entire lives for combat were now learning ancient melodies of binding and harmony. Engineer Hyon found herself leading a group of 300 humans aboard the civilian transport vessel New Horizon. Most of them were refugees from the outer colonies, people who had lost their homes to Devourer attacks. Now they were humanity's last hope. I don't understand the science, said Maria Santos, a farmer from the destroyed Epsilon colony. How can singing stop those monsters when military weapons can't? Hyon thought about Dr. Minho's explanations. The Devourers aren't really monsters, she said. They used to be beings of pure harmony, creatures who helped create the universe itself. But they became corrupted by hunger for consciousness. The Song of Binding works by reminding them of what they used to be. And only humans can sing it? Only humans developed music and consciousness without psychic interference, Hyon explained. Other species evolved with telepathic abilities, but humans learned to express pure emotion through sound alone. That makes our voices clean somehow, uncorrupted. As the preparations continued, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Devourers had changed their tactics completely. Instead of slowly converting individuals and ships, they were manifesting in massive numbers near human settlements. Ancient entities the size of space stations materialized near Earth, their beautiful and terrible forms visible even through telescopes. But they weren't attacking yet. They seemed to be waiting, gathering their forces for a final assault that would eliminate humanity before the Song of Binding could be completed. Communications. Officer Jiwon monitored the quantum networks from Admiral Daewon's flagship. Sir, we're getting confirmations from across human space. Estimated participation is now over 40 million people. Admiral Daewon studied the tactical displays showing Devourer positions. How much longer until they attack? Unknown, sir. But Dr. Minho estimates we need at least 12 more hours to complete preparations. And Nari's synchronization system? Testing phase complete. She says she can coordinate the temporal echo effect, but warns that we only get one chance. If the timing is off, the quantum resonance will collapse and we won't be able to try again. Across the galaxy, humans prepared for the most important performance in galactic history. Children who had learned simple songs in school were now studying harmonies that touched dimensions beyond normal reality. Elderly people who hadn't sung in decades practiced melodies that could save consciousness itself. On Earth, the famous Sydney Opera House had been converted into a command center. Dr. Minho worked with Nari and a team of quantum physicists to coordinate the final preparations. Massive holographic displays showed the positions of singing groups throughout human space. Millions of points of light representing humanity's scattered children. Status report, Dr. Minho called out. Outer colonies are ready, reported the coordinator for the Rim territories. 2 million singers in position. Generation fleets confirm participation, added another voice. The Long Journey and New Horizon fleets have adjusted course to optimal positions. Earth coordination centers are at maximum capacity, called a third coordinator. Estimated 15 million participants across all continents. As the reports continued, Nari fine-tuned her synchronization system. The quantum mathematics involved were incredibly complex, requiring her to calculate temporal variations across thousands of light years while accounting for relativistic effects and quantum uncertainty. "Dr. Minho," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something. The temporal echo effect will work, but there's a risk." "What kind of risk?" "If the Song of Binding succeeds, the quantum resonance will create a permanent harmonic link between all participating humans. We'll be connected on a level that goes beyond normal consciousness." Dr. Minho frowned. "Connected how?" "I don't know exactly. The mathematics suggest that human consciousness will become partially synchronized across the galaxy. We might share thoughts, emotions, experiences. Humanity could become something new." Before Dr. Minho could respond, alarms sounded throughout the command center. On the tactical displays, the Devourer forces began moving toward human settlements. "They're starting their attack." Admiral Daewon's voice came through the communication system. "All preparations must be completed within the next hour." Nari looked at her calculations one more time. Everything was ready. 43 million humans spread across hundreds of star systems were prepared to sing together in a moment outside time itself. "Dr. Minho," she said, "we need to make the decision now. Do we risk changing humanity forever, or do we let the Devourers consume all consciousness in the galaxy?" The scientist looked at the displays showing massive Devourer entities approaching Earth. Ancient beings of terrible beauty and hunger, large enough to devour worlds, moving toward humanity's homeworld with obvious intent to destroy. "Send the signal," he said. "All groups to standby positions. We begin the Song of Binding in 1 hour." Across the galaxy, millions of humans took their positions. They stood in converted stadiums and cargo bays, in generation ship assembly halls and space station observation decks. They were miners and farmers, soldiers and scientists, children and grandparents. They were humanity itself, preparing to sing for the survival of consciousness. And in the void between dimensions, ancient entities that had once been beings of pure harmony felt the first notes of a song they had not heard for thousands of years. A song that reminded them of what they had been before hunger corrupted their perfect nature. The Song of Binding was about to begin. The moment came as Earth's sun rose over the Australian continent. Across the galaxy, 43 million human voices waited for Nari's signal. The teenage communications prodigy sat in the quantum command center, her fingers poised over the temporal synchronization controls. "All stations report ready," she announced, her young voice steady despite the enormous responsibility on her shoulders. On the view screen, Admiral Daewon watched as massive Devourer entities materialized in Earth's orbital space. They were beings of impossible beauty and terrible hunger, creatures that looked like living symphonies made of light and shadow. Some were larger than space stations, others stretched across thousands of kilometers like cosmic jellyfish made of pure music. "They're not attacking yet," Communications Officer Ji-Won reported. "It's like they're waiting for something." Dr. Minho understood. "They can sense what we're about to do." The Devourers remember the Song of Binding. They're afraid. Across human space, the preparations were complete. On Earth, stadiums and concert halls were packed with singers. The Sydney Opera House held 10,000 voices. Madison Square Garden had been converted into a massive singing chamber. In London, Wembley Stadium echoed with practice harmonies. On the moon, mining crews had gathered in the great extraction caverns, their voices ready to add to Earth's contribution. Mars' industrial complex had shut down all operations, so 200,000 workers could participate. The asteroid belt miners had positioned their ships in perfect formations, turning the entire mining fleet into a distributed choir. Captain Sora stood with her crew in the cargo bay of the Bright Star, now positioned with the Outer Rim fleet. Around her, refugees from destroyed colonies prepared to sing for the survival of consciousness itself. Engineer Hyon looked at the people around her, farmers, mechanics, scientists, children. "Are you ready?" she asked them. Maria Santos, the farmer from Epsilon Colony, nodded. "My world was destroyed by those things. If singing can stop them, then I'll sing until my voice gives out." On the quantum networks, Nari began the final countdown. Her synchronization system calculated temporal coordinates for every singing group, adjusting for relativistic effects and quantum variations across thousands of light years. 10 seconds to temporal synchronization point, she announced. In orbit around Earth, The Devourer entities began to move. Their beautiful, terrifying forms approached the planet's atmosphere. But they moved slowly, cautiously, as if they could sense the harmonic energies building throughout human space. 5 seconds. Dr. Minho watched his instruments showing quantum resonance building across the galaxy. 43 million human voices, each positioned at precise temporal coordinates, ready to sing as one. 3, 2, 1, sing. The song of binding began. Across the galaxy, in a moment that existed outside normal time, 43 million human voices joined in perfect harmony. The melody was ancient beyond description, a song that had been sung to bind the Devourers thousands of years ago. But now it carried something new, the pure emotional expression that only humanity had developed. On Earth, the massive Devourer entities stopped moving. Their forms, which had been solid and terrifying, began to flicker like mirages. The song was affecting them, reaching into their corrupted nature and touching the harmony they had once been. But the Devourers fought back. Waves of psychic energy crashed against the human singers, trying to break their concentration. Several singing groups on the outer colonies faltered as Devourer influence pressed against their minds. "Hold the harmony," Dr. Minho shouted into the communication networks. "Don't let them break the song." Communications Officer Jiwon felt the psychic assault like a physical blow. The Devourers were trying to make her stop singing, filling her mind with images of despair and hunger. But she held on to the melody, letting it flow through her like a river of light. Engineer Hyun saw several people in her group stumble as the psychic attack hit them. "Remember what this song is about," she called to them. "We're not just making music, we're healing ancient wounds." The song of binding grew stronger as more voices joined the harmony. But something unexpected began to happen. Dr. Minho's instruments detected changes in the quantum resonance patterns. The song was evolving, becoming something more than the original binding melody. "It's working too well," he said to Admiral Daewon. "The song isn't just containing the Devourers, it's healing them." On the view screen, the massive Devourer entity nearest to Earth began to change. Its form stopped flickering and started glowing with gentle golden light. The creature's movements became less predatory, more graceful. Then, impossibly, it began to sing along. The Devourer's voice was like nothing anyone had ever heard, a harmony that touched dimensions beyond normal perception. But instead of the hungry converting song that had claimed so many victims, this was the original voice of creation itself. The entity was remembering what it had been before corruption changed it. Other Devourers throughout the galaxy began to respond. Ancient beings that had been pure hunger for thousands of years started singing the harmony they had forgotten. Their forms transformed from predatory shadows into beings of light and music. Captain Sora felt tears streaming down her face as she sang. The melody was connecting her to something vast and beautiful, not just to the other human singers, but to the consciousness of the universe itself. On Proxima Station, young Nari monitored the quantum effects of the song. The temporal echo chamber was working perfectly, but it was also creating the permanent changes she had warned about. Human consciousness across the galaxy was becoming synchronized, connected by harmonies that transcended space and time. "Dr. Minho," she reported, "the quantum resonance is stabilizing into a permanent pattern. Humanity is changing." The scientist saw the readings on his instruments. Every human participating in the song was becoming connected to every other human. Not telepathically like other species, but through pure emotional harmony. They would remain individuals, but they would also be part of something larger. "Is it dangerous?" Admiral Daewon asked. "I don't think so," Dr. Minho replied. "It's like humanity is becoming a galactic-scale musical instrument. Each person is still themselves, but they're also part of a greater symphony." The song of binding reached its climax as the largest Devourer entity, an ancient being the size of a small moon, manifested near Earth. This was clearly their leader, the first of their kind to be corrupted by hunger. Its voice had been silent for millennia, but now it began to sing. The harmony that emerged was indescribable. The redeemed Devourer's voice blended with 43 million human voices, creating music that touched the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. Stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the song. Space itself resonated with the melody. Engineer Hyun felt the change happening inside her. She was still herself, but she could sense every other human in the galaxy. Their hopes, their fears, their determination to save consciousness itself. They were becoming something new while remaining completely human. The song continued for what felt like hours but was only minutes in normal time. When it finally ended, the galaxy was transformed. The Devourers had become something new, guardians of consciousness rather than its consumers. They volunteered to enter a new form of existence, becoming protectors of sentient life throughout the universe. In the aftermath, as communication networks came back online and the quantum resonance stabilized, humanity found itself changed. They were still individuals, still human, but they were also connected by invisible harmonies that would never fade. Admiral Daewin received reports from across human space. No casualties, no conversions. The Devourer threat was ended not through violence but through healing. Ancient entities that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years had been reminded of their original nature and chosen to transform themselves. Dr. Minho sat in his laboratory, studying the quantum readings from the greatest musical performance in galactic history. The Song of Binding had worked, but it had also created something unprecedented. Humanity had become the galaxy's first truly harmonic species, individuals who could act as one when needed, connected by bonds of pure emotional truth. Communications Officer Jiwan felt the change most clearly. She could sense the contentment and relief of humans throughout the galaxy. They had faced the ultimate test and proven that consciousness could triumph over hunger, that harmony could heal even the most ancient wounds. On Proxima Station, Nari reviewed her synchronization data. The temporal echo chamber had worked perfectly, creating a moment of perfect unity across impossible distances. But the real achievement wasn't technical. It was showing that beings who chose cooperation over consumption could accomplish anything. Captain Sora stood on her ship's bridge, looking out at stars that seemed somehow brighter than before. The galaxy was safe, consciousness was protected, and humanity had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon was simply the willingness to sing together. In the months that followed, the transformed Devourers became allies and protectors of galactic civilization. They shared their ancient knowledge freely and helped establish new forms of harmony between species. The galaxy entered an age of peace and understanding unlike anything in its history, and at the center of it all was humanity, a species